Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Reboot Your Business Through Your Business Development Plan. My name is Michael Bazar, and delighted to be with you again this morning with a team from Griffith College, Dublin, Cork, and Limerick. We have a great session for you today, a whole range of different speakers. We do invite you to submit your questions throughout using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be monitoring that throughout, and we will take your questions on air. Thank you very much to everyone who has sent us in feedback. We really appreciate that, and anyone who sent us in any messages of support for this series. This series is designed for small businesses throughout Ireland, and we welcome any feedback in terms of developing additional resources for you as we move forward. We do have the ability to create additional resources and sessions. In terms of resources on the website at the moment, we have overviews, and we are also uploading videos of the previous sessions. There is also a workbook that you can take part in throughout this series. We invite you to connect as well on social media and follow Griffith College channels using the hashtag Reboot2020. I'm going to hand you over now to Griffith College Cork, to Sinead, who will introduce today's speakers. Thanks very much and enjoy.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. As Michael mentioned, my name is Sinead O'Dea, and I'm based in the Griffith College Cork campus. We are delighted that so many companies from all around the country are taking part in the programme, from Letterkenny to Cahersabeen, from Oranmore to Drogheda. It's fantastic to have you here, and I have to give a special mention to our friends in the Cork Chamber. It is fantastic to see so many companies in Cork working on rebooting their business development plan. We hope you're enjoying the program so far, and with each session you're taking some time out to just stop, think, take stock, and start to reimagine your business as we start to emerge from the lockdown. Today's session is entitled, How Am I Going to Develop My Business Post-COVID-19? No surprises, this was a really popular topic, and we decided as a group that to make the absolute most of the hour, we decided to bring in two speakers with two companies that have had to go through turbulent economic times, and they've come out the other side. They've weathered the storm by being nimble, adapting quickly, being innovative, and spotting new opportunities and new market segments. So the first speaker is John O'Mahony. John has had a 30-year career in the media industry, and 22 of those have been with the Irish Examiner. John is the managing editor, and he's the head of content. John will be followed by Mark Dowling. Mark is an excellent lecturer from our business faculty, and his areas of special expertise are in sales, marketing, and business management. After Mark, Steve, I'll come back on again to introduce our second guest speaker and Griffith College lecturer. So please send in lots of questions for Q&A at the very end. My colleague in Griffith College Limerick, Anthony Brosnan, will take those questions. So workbooks at the ready, as Michael mentioned. Listen closely. Use those three questions to focus your thoughts, and jot down anything that you think that you could use as part of your development plan. These little notes could be very valuable in the coming weeks and months. Little strategies, simple little ways of piecing together your new plan. So with that said, John, when you're ready, let's go.
Good morning, Sinead. Sorry, just I'm having a problem with my video, I think. But yeah, good morning. How are you doing? Thanks, Sinead, and good morning, everybody. Apologies, like most people, I'm actually broadcasting live from the spare bedroom in the house this morning, as I get used to kind of working from home. I've been pretty much cocooned here for the past month. Like everybody else, we kind of took measures to, I suppose, to respond to the crisis and get used to the new reality of actually working from home. As Sinead mentioned, my name is John O'Mahony. I'm the managing editor with the Examiner newspaper. I've worked with the examiner for the best part of 22 years, and I'm the head of content. Like everybody else, I suppose we had to respond as an organization at the outbreak of the COVID crisis. I suppose, and our kind of first priority was employee safety. So we put in place to relocate everybody out of the office and set up a remote working so we could get everybody actually working from home. Unlike a lot of companies, we've stayed operational and open since the crisis began, and we continue to deliver morning newspapers in print and across a number of digital channels as well. That's being obviously challenging in the current environment. Just to give you an idea of the scale, the examiner group itself has in the region of about 230 employees. We produce 2 daily publications, the Examiner and the Evening Echo. And we also run 3 websites on a daily basis. The main Examiner website, Breaking News, which is a national service, and then the Evening Echo also has its own site. And then we also produce and sub pages for, I think, 5 regional papers in our group. So on any busy month, we would kind of produce in the region of about 5,000 pages, as well as maintaining 3 websites on a daily basis. So it's a big operation. We have in the region of about 230 employees in our Cork office across 2 floors. We also have an office in Dublin, and we also maintain an office in government buildings where a political team are actually based. So from a logistical point of view, getting everybody out of the building home was a logistical nightmare. But like, thankfully, we managed to get everybody set up remotely. And yes, we've been kind of producing newspapers and delivering kind of across all the digital platforms every day during the crisis, despite that kind of logistical challenge. Just to give you some perspective, the Examiner is, we first produced the first Examiner 178 years ago, back in 1841, August, I think. So the Examiner has been producing a daily paper for the best part of 178 years, which I think is in the region of about 57,000 days. And of those 57,000 days, we've missed publication only twice. The first day was 1920, when the Black and Tans firebombed the Examiner office in just off of Patrick Street and damaged the printing press, and we missed the publication that day, which obviously was not in our control. And secondly, it was Storm Emma 2 years ago, when in advance we managed to actually get everybody out of the building again working from home. But against, I suppose, our greater control, we couldn't get our trucks out of the printing press in Dublin because they were snowbound. So we failed to get a newspaper into the shops in that morning, but we did manage to get a neat paper up, and we did obviously manage to maintain our kind of digital presence across the 3 channels that time. So it's not a bad record, and as I mentioned earlier, we've managed to maintain our business and keep everybody, I suppose, in check in the current challenges. What we did, I suppose, what we learned from Storm Emma was that we needed to have a plan B. Obviously, we could plan so much in the event of a storm or future storms, but I suppose we needed to kind of put a plan in place to, I suppose, take in consideration all challenges. So we took some learnings from Storm Emma 2 years ago. We managed to set everybody up remotely. We were confident that down the road, should a challenge like that happen again, that we could actually respond. I suppose what we weren't prepared for was a pandemic, but we did have some learnings, and I suppose the kind of first key takeaway for us really is the need to be flexible as a company, large or small, to be able to respond to whatever challenges were thrown our way, and to ensure that the services we provide, in this case as a news industry, that we could actually maintain and in some ways adapt those services to the circumstances. And we are doing that on a daily basis, if not on an hourly basis, as the circumstances change. Obviously, the environment, the economic environment, the social environment has changed, possibly more so in the past month, and certainly in my 22 years at the Examiner, and possibly in the previous 186 years as well, in terms of the scale. So we are adapting our business every day to meet that challenge. And we're in the communication business, so it's not easy. I mean, we, as well as producing the national papers, we do have 3 daily websites, and that's up to the minute news. So there are conversations kind of happening every minute. So we kind of have had to put in place a system of communication to allow us kind of communicate as an organization across 230 people spread out across the city and county, and to be able to kind of maintain that service. And I suppose one of the keys to us really was, as well as kind of employee safety, is communication. We've taken advantage of modern technology, conference calls, video calls, webinars, as we're on now, chat groups, texting, Skype, email have all become part of our norm. I barely use my mobile phone anymore. We've kind of just found different ways to communicate people. And I suppose what's been key to us as an organization is to try to keep everybody informed in terms of like we would do inside the building. So to kind of maintain what we had internally, but to copy that externally. So we've kept the same work practices as an organization. We've tried to keep all our employees informed, and that's been a challenge because we've had to adapt. But like everybody else, we've taken advantage of the likes of Zoom, the likes of Google Chat, and set up kind of different kind of working groups for different factors and sections of our organization to ensure that we can maintain the sort of the same timetables and stability for employees, which is actually very important. Then a couple, I suppose, and like anything else, as the circumstances change on a daily basis and the governments begin to kind of lift restrictions, we are looking at ways of adapting our organizations to respond to that and take advantage of that. So like how people shop, the restrictions, the lockdown, we've had to amend our business to respond to that. One of the big areas, I suppose, we didn't allow for, and we had to kind of ramp up, was the explosion in home deliveries. Obviously, with people being in lockdown, there was huge demand for our home delivery service. So we sort of had to take from some parts of the organization in terms of employee numbers and I suppose reallocate those to respond for areas of demand. Obviously, online news has been hugely, the traffic across all our sites has hugely increased as people look for information, I suppose, in relation to the pandemic, but also adjust to their own new kind of realities of kind of spending more time at home. I'm sure everybody has kind of spent countless hours kind of watching their their favorite box sets across Netflix. So we've had to kind of, I suppose, think on our feet and adapt to that as an organization, in terms of kind of meeting that demand, meeting the kind of challenges that demand, which are kind of huge in terms of, obviously, it's how do you get the paper into people's hands? How do we get more people to kind of log onto our website? How do we get more people to download our e-paper? And I suppose as an organization, it's kind of, I suppose, hammered home to us the importance and opportunity of digital subscriptions. One of the upturns, I suppose, for newspapers, and there haven't been too many like other organizations, we've been impacted. But so one of the upturns for us, and one of the opportunities for us going forward, is the huge increase in demand for reliable, traditional, trustworthy news. And there has been a welcome spike in subscriptions across all news organizations and across our own. Just to give you some background, the Examiner, while it still is the only kind of national newspaper based out of Cork. We did merge or overtaken or bought out by the Irish Times 2 years ago, and that merger has made us the largest Irish-based news organisation, giving us a far greater reach and an employee base of about 900 people. So the kind of challenge has not just been for us internally within the examiner, but how we communicate as a wider group and how we respond to that as a wider group. So I suppose it's kind of brought the two organizations much closer together as well, because we're using skill sets from both organizations to best meet the challenge. So in many ways, well, the COVID crisis hasn't been welcome, and it has kind of forced us to kind of look at how we operate internally within an organization, and also how we operate within the wider group, which, as I mentioned earlier, involves about 6 regional papers and two larger organizations across 2 provinces. So that kind of challenge has been not easy, but again, there are opportunities there. And I suppose one of the kind of key messages I'd like to get across today is that while it can be difficult enough to kind of see the opportunities that are currently there in the climate, which is unparalleled, there are some. And as more companies begin to kind of plan to get back to business and to get back in operation again, I suppose from your own kind of point of view, you do have to look where the opportunities actually are. And you do, as an organization or as organizations, have to look how you're going to respond to what's a very different climate out there. I'll just leave you with kind of 5 takeaways, just, I suppose, from our own learnings and from, I suppose, what people are going to be facing into in the future. One of those is you can be guaranteed that nothing will be the same again. I think everybody knows at this stage that how society operates, how we shop, what we do on a daily basis, how pubs, restaurants will function, how businesses will function, the phased nature of how the economy will be reopened will be very, very different and very challenging. And I suppose the reality of COVID-19 won't be gone overnight until we get a vaccine. It'll be with us for the foreseeable future, certainly into 2021. So businesses are going to have to adapt to what that reality is. And in many ways, that reality will change, but obviously that'll form a large part of your planning as you begin to reopen. Secondly, to coincide with that, how we work has changed fundamentally. Even as an organization like the Examiner, we are having kind of daily conversations in as to what the Examiner will look like when we get back to work, and how we manage that across the organization. Again, I suppose with our key priority being in worker safety. So in terms of how companies operate, taking in social distancing, the fact that face masks are going to become a reality. Obviously, mass gatherings will be banned for the foreseeable future. So how we kind of do daily meetings, how we have conferences. There's been mixed reaction to remote working. Some people love it, some people hate it, and everybody has adapted to it. So as an organization, we have to look at that, and we have to look at how best to take advantage of that and to show flexibility as an organization, because obviously a lot of our employees have a different family set up now, obviously with schools being out of sync and out of operation possibly until September, October. We're going to have to adapt and be flexible, and to, I suppose, to be as understanding as we can as an organization. And that's obviously going to be a challenge for every other company as well, regardless of your size and scale. The third takeaway is I suppose the political and the economic landscape is far, far different now. Just purely from a political kind of point of view, the change in Ireland since the election, which was I think 80 days ago, has been monumental. The fact that you have the 2 biggest civil war parties now talking about going into coalition, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. It's been kind of lost somewhat in the COVID crisis, but that's an unparalleled change politically for us as a country. And you're probably aware now the talks in government formation will kick off this actually tomorrow, I think, with the promise of a new government in place sometime in June, and it has to be in place in June if new legislation is to be passed. So the political landscape will be far, far different and far, far challenging, and I suppose will be a factor in what people are planning. And obviously the economic landscape will be very different and very challenging, and I suppose at the forefront of people's thinking as they begin to reopen their businesses. The figures this morning were kind of quite grim in terms of the hole in the day-to-day spending and income for the government, kind of factored in the region of, I think, about 12 or 13 billion in terms of the reduction in tax take this year. There are now 1 million people either partially or wholly dependent on government subsidies, and I suppose the aim for the government now is to sort of wean people off that, to allow companies to open up on a structured basis, and to get the economy back operational again. Unfortunately, it won't respond as quickly as it went down, but again, as we see people going back to work, that whole picture will change, hopefully for the positive. The last, I suppose the fourth takeaway for me is the importance of having an online presence. I think every organization, regardless of your size or scale, realizes now that how you deliver your services has to be more flexible, and possibly the chances of disruption again further down the road are very realistic. So we may well have a shutdown again across sectors or across geography in the future. So you have to be imaginative in terms of how you deliver services, and the importance of having an online presence has been hammered home now. A small example here, we have a little deli just down the road from us, and it was closed like everybody else. They were kind of very worried about their business, but in the space of 48 hours, and with the help of 2 first-year college students, they managed to put their business up online basically, and they managed to reopen with the home delivery service, with people dialing in. They put the menu up online. They allowed customers dial in and choose whatever they wanted, and they guaranteed a home delivery within an hour. So again, they had to adapt, and thankfully very successfully, and they've managed to maintain. And I suppose it's that kind of imaginative thinking and being able to kind of respond on your feet that'll kind of prove, I suppose, kind of most challenging, but also offer opportunities for companies. My last takeaway is something hopefully a bit more positive, and to leave you on a bit of a positive note. Unlike the 2008 banking crisis, the current crisis isn't a lack of demand, and there is a huge pent-up demand there. Like everybody else, I'm dying to leave the house here to go for a pint, to go for a meal, to go to a cinema. So there is a huge pent-up demand there. Consumer spending has only stopped because people haven't been allowed to stop, unlike back in 2008 when people didn't have the money to go out and shop again. So from your company's kind of point of view, or from your business's kind of point of view, hopefully there will be an opportunity there. I also kind of believe that how we shop will change. I think local and loyalty will become the new buzzwords. I certainly have become a lot more conscious in my own kind of shopping habits, and have done my best to shop local, to support local shops. As an organization, we began to look at things like consumer and customer loyalty, and we began to have conversations with our most loyal customers, in keeping a conversation going with them through these difficult times, and also for us as an organization to kind of take advantage of that when we do begin to kind of reopen and take advantage again of the uplift in the economy. So I suppose there is an opportunity there for organizations as they begin to kind of reopen and face reality again, but there are also challenges in there. But let's leave it on the positive, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of take advantage of the pent-up demand that's there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. And now I'd like to introduce Mark Dowling, Griffith College lecturer, specialising in sales, marketing and business management. Over to you, Mark. Thanks.
Thank you, Sinead. Can you see me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you very much for that. As Sinead mentioned, my name is Mark Dowling. I work in Griffith College, Dublin, where I teach in the business faculty. And as Sinead mentioned, I teach some of the subjects I teach are sales, marketing, and strategy. Prior to that, I've worked in various business development roles in the IT and the mechanical engineering sectors. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak here today. And I'd like to thank John for his insights into how he has coped with these unprecedented challenges, these times we're living in at the moment, and how he has adapted, how his company's adapted to the situation. And I think the key takeaway from that is the idea of flexibility and of adaptation. So that's really what I want to talk to you about for the next few minutes is how can you, what things can you consider to enable you to adapt to these unprecedented times. So what I have is I've got a couple of slides that I just want to walk through with you, if that's okay, just to give you an overview of its research-based advice or guidelines in terms of building flexibility into your organization. So without further ado, let me take you there. And firstly, what I'd like to do is just to have a look at if I can. Apologies, just one moment. I'd just like to move this slide on. Yeah, okay. So first up, what I'd like to do is take a bird's eye view of exactly where we are, just before I get into the nitty gritty of the angle that I'm coming from. And so this graphic shows the external influences on your company. At the broadest level, we have the general environment. And these are the major areas that affect all businesses. So for example, the world over is experiencing socio-cultural changes caused by the pandemic. And as such, things have changed, such as mass consumption, the restrictions on mass consumption, working from home, shopping, entertainment, and so on. They've all changed, and some of these things have changed forever. At the next level in, towards the company, we have the industry in which your company sits. And this includes your customers, your competitors, your suppliers, and so on. And they represent the competitive pressures that your company has to deal with on a daily basis. And then right in the center is the company itself. And this is really what I'd like to talk to you about in the next few minutes. And more specifically, what you can do within your company, what changes can you make within your company to help you to build flexibility to adapt to these new times that we're in. So this is a kind of an overview of some of the things that I will speak about here. So first, we're going to look at this idea of capabilities. So I'd like to talk about business capabilities. And reconfiguring your capabilities. And capabilities are those things that you do, and they're the things that you do well. So what worked in the past may not necessarily work in the future. So we're just going to take that into consideration. And the idea that capabilities should be dynamic rather than static. The second thing there is I'm going to point towards 10 generic capabilities that researchers have described as key intangible assets that well-managed companies tend to have. So we'll have a look at those, and perhaps one or two of those might resonate with you. The third thing is how to conduct a capabilities audit. So we'll just walk through a few steps. Practical steps in how you might approach that task. And then finally, we'll have a look at a few guidelines in terms of how to keep you on track when you're evaluating your capabilities, because no two companies are the same, different industries, different markets, and so on. So how you approach this, you would need to tailor to suit your own situation. So first up, what are business capabilities? Well, they're those things that give your company the ability to innovate or to respond to changing customer needs. So capabilities can be described as intangible assets. So you can't see them, you can't touch them, but they make all the difference in the world in terms of your company's performance and market value. They represent the ways that people and resources are brought together to accomplish work. And there's a relationship between resources and capabilities. Resources are those things that you have, the physical, financial, and human resources that you have. But more importantly, it's how you use those resources. And if you use them well, you create capabilities. So the ability to exploit your resources enables you to create capabilities can emerge from that ability. And they're the things that each company is good at. They're the things that you're particularly good at. Some companies are better than others at exploiting the resources. So these capabilities, they're more difficult for your competitors to copy, and they're not easy to measure. So often managers pay less attention to them than tangible investments like in plant or equipment. So as I mentioned, capabilities, they shouldn't be dynamic. It's research suggests that they're not, they shouldn't be dynamic. So when you're good at something, it's always worth continuing to be paranoid, I guess. I think it was Andy Grove from IBM suggested, I know a large organization, but the idea to be paranoid, to be always looking over your shoulder, always looking to see what the next thing is, fearful of the competition and watching how consumer behavior is changing. So this involves building these ideas into your practice. So we start with the process of reviewing and looking at your capabilities starts with sensing. And that's looking to explore what opportunities might be out there in the new marketplace. And this is something that everybody's doing right now. And then once you've spotted an opportunity, it's then necessary to try and seize that opportunity. And we can see examples of companies seizing these opportunities all the time, especially in the mass consumption restrictions that are there. How companies have had to adapt and change with their business practices. So for example, movie theaters, some of them are offering a drive-in service. Restaurants are delivering meals. They recognize that there's less communal dining and more home cooking. Coffee shops are moving from retail to distribution of coffee beans and coffee-related products, equipment, and so on. And even gyms have moved online. They're offering classes online and nutrition advice. And a company I'm familiar with is a friend of mine has a company that designs and builds display stands for exhibitions. And they have a design studio. They've skilled tradespeople to build the stands, and they have an installation team. And they recently won a contract with Enterprise Ireland for an exhibition in Dubai. It was quite a lucrative contract. However, like everything else, that's been postponed, and this company are considering what other opportunities are out there. And opportunities can come from different places. For example, motivated by their civic duty, they started designing, they printed a few hundred signs for healthcare premises, the COVID signs and how to warning signs and so on in relation to the pandemic. And they approached the DCC and offered these to them. The DCC saw that they offered these signs to them for nothing, for free. But when DCC recognised, Dublin County Council, when they recognised that these the company could print these faster than their existing supplier, they offered the company more paid work. Additionally, they're investigating sneeze guards for pubs, bars, and restaurants, and so on. So they recognize that the existing offerings of sneeze guards are quite basic, so they could use their own capabilities, design capabilities, and tradespeople, skills tradespeople, to design better guards, the more attractive, that are going to be in great demand in many retail environments. So these are just examples of companies that are a company that is sensing and seizing opportunities and reconfiguring their capabilities. So although they're redirecting some capabilities, they're going to need to develop new capabilities to explore new markets, and perhaps they may need to acquire new technologies and so on to enable them to access these new markets. So this is the process that of dynamic capabilities, of changing and reconfiguring your capabilities. So this is on the back of research. There are 10 generic capabilities, and not all capabilities are appropriate for every company. So these are examples of capabilities that well-managed companies tend to have. So such companies excel in as many as 3 of these. So I'm just going to walk you through quickly each of these. The first one is talent. Talent is the capability to attract and to motivate competent people. So good employees have the skills for today and tomorrow's business requirements. And talent can be sourced in different ways. You can buy it, that is to hire new talent. You can build it, that is to develop existing talent within your business, or you can borrow it, and that's to access thought leaders through alliances or partnerships. And you can earn commitment from your employees by ensuring that the ones who contribute the most receive more of what matters to them. And this capability can be accessed, can be assessed through productivity measures, employee surveys, and direct observation. So the next capability that we have here, the second one is speed. And this is the ability to recognize opportunities and act immediately. So whether that's to exploit new markets or create new products, or implement new business practices. And speed can be tracked in a couple of different ways. For example, how long does it take to go from concept to commercialization? Or how long does it take to go from collection of customer data to changes in customer relations? So just as increases in stock turnover show that physical assets are being used well, time savings demonstrate improvements in labor productivity, as well as increased enthusiasm and responsiveness to opportunities. The third one is shared mindset, and this is the company capability that ensures that employees and customers have positive and consistent images of and experiences of your company. So we should assess the degree of alignment between internal and external mindsets. For example, you can measure the degree of consensus among your employees when they're asked, what are the top 3 things that the company wants to be known for in the future? Then you could invite your key customers to provide feedback on how they view your company. So the greater the degree of alignment between the internal and external mindsets, the greater the value of this capability. The fourth one is accountability. And this is being good at obtaining high performance from your employees. And performance accountability becomes a business capability when employees realize the importance of the contribution they make to your company. The way to track this is to examine the tools that you use to manage performance. That's it could be appraisal forms, or how you vary compensation based on employee performance. The next one is learning, and this is generating new ideas with impact. New ideas can be generated in different ways. Benchmarking is one way, and that's by looking at what other companies are doing. Experimentation or competence, you could hire somebody with new skills or ideas, or through continuous improvement. And for individuals, learning means letting go of old practices and adopting new ones. Then we move on to leadership. Leadership is being good at embedding potential leaders within the company. So you can track this by monitoring the pool of future leaders. How many backups do you have for your top employees? People come and go all the time. So you should encourage your stronger employees to participate in temporary teams or cross-functional assignments or action-based training activities to facilitate succession plans. The next one is customer connectivity. Customer connectivity. So this has been good at building long-lasting relationships with your key customers. So as we know, 20% of your customers, generally speaking, provide 80% of your business. So being able to connect with these key customers is considered a strength. So customer connectivity, it can come from a dedicated accounts team, or databases that track interactions with your customers, or ensuring customer-focused practices play a central role when you're hiring, when you're training, and when you're compensating, putting the customer at the center of everything that you do in relation to those practices. And also frequent customer surveys can offer insights into how customers perceive your connectivity with them. And then we have strategic unity. And this is being good at articulating and sharing a strategic point of view. And we can look at this on 3 different levels. On an intellectual level, you can make sure that employees know what the strategy is and why it's important. You can reinforce this by repeating simple messages, and you can measure it by noting how consistently employees respond when asked about the company's strategy. In terms of their behaviour, you can ask employees how much of their time is spent in support of the strategy and whether their suggestions for improvements are being acted upon. And then finally, procedurally, it's advised that you should continually invest in procedures that are essential to your strategy. Innovation. This is being good at doing something new. So whether it's innovations with new products or services or administrative processes or customer service, the idea is to focus on the future rather than on past successes. This can increase, it can energize your employees to come up with new ideas, to tap into their creative skills, to find better ways of doing what they actually do at the moment. And it's also good for customers. It can delight customers with these new ideas. And then finally is efficiency. And this is being good at managing costs. So while it's not possible to save your way to prosperity, managers who fail to manage costs will likely not grow the top line. So we can track this capability. It's probably the easiest of all these capabilities that we have here in front of us to track. So stocks or inventories or labor, direct and indirect, capital employed and cost of goods sold can be all viewed on balance sheets and income statements. So as I mentioned, there are 10 generic capabilities, and this is at the heart of this conversation that I'm having now with you. And as I say, these are used by well-managed companies who specialize. They don't excel in all of them, and research suggests that you don't try to excel in all of them, but you choose at least 2, perhaps 3 of these to focus your attention on. So conducting a capabilities audit, there's 4 steps involved, and what we're doing is we're assessing our actual and desired capabilities. So capabilities audit can help you to monitor your company's intangible assets. It'll help highlight the ones that are most important to your company given its history and strategy. And it measures how well the company delivers on these capabilities. And finally, it can lead to an action plan. So if I just take you through the steps very quickly in terms of the practicalities of it. First up is to create the content of your capabilities audit. So you can use the 10 generic capabilities that were defined a little earlier that we had just had a look at. And you can tailor that language to suit your own business requirements. So no matter how you create the list, the capabilities you audit should reflect those needed to deliver your company's strategic promises. The second step is to gather data on your current and desired capabilities. So you can do this by creating a short survey. You can survey your employees, say 20 questions or so, and leave room for comments. So for each capability, respondents could be asked to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 the company's current performance. And additionally, the level of achievement the company would need in order to meet its goals. This exercise can reveal gaps between the current and desired capabilities. The third step is to review your survey findings. So you analyze the data to identify the most critical capabilities requiring attention. So look for patterns in the data. Determine, say, 3 capabilities needed to deliver on your company's goals. And the fourth step is to create an action plan. Before you actually create the action plan, you should define the capabilities that are most critical to examining your chosen strategy to meet your goals. You don't want to be getting busy doing the wrong things. So for example, a survey might reveal certain weaknesses which you might feel these capabilities or these weaknesses are not essential to you meeting your goals. And likewise, you might discover certain capabilities where you've scored high, but you still decide to invest in further developing this capability as it might be seen as critical to success. So you might focus on strengthening marketing skills and building talent that would allow you to target a broader set of customers. So the idea, in short, is not necessarily to boost weak capabilities, but to identify and build capabilities that will have the strongest and most direct impact on the execution of your strategy. So by focusing on the gap between actual and desired capabilities, you can determine where to invest your attention. So the plan should have clear steps and should have measures on how you're monitoring progress. But prior to actually putting the plan together, it might be worth sitting down and generating some questions to answer, like who's going to be responsible for delivering it? How will we monitor our progress in attaining new capabilities or boosting existing capabilities? Or what decisions can we take immediately to foster improvement? Or what actions can we take to promote a particular capability? So eventually, you should be able to come up with an action plan that focused on the outcomes of the research that you've done. And that might look like your decision to seek out education and training programs, or it might be setting new performance standards within your company, or perhaps acquiring new technologies to sustain or to enhance an existing capability, or to create a new capability. So again, some guidelines that we have here in terms of of looking at your capabilities and auditing and evaluating your existing and desired capabilities. Supported by research, some of these ideas, these guidelines offer advice. And the first is to get focused, and that's, as we mentioned, that's to focus on no more than 3 of these capabilities to spend your time and attention on. So you should aim to try to excel in at least 2 of these capabilities. And so it's important to identify the capabilities that will have the most impact and will be the easiest to implement and prioritize. So this doesn't mean ignoring the others, as they do need to be there. You need to be able to compete. You need to be able to be at the races, but you don't need to excel in all of them. So you do need a certain level of performance in each of the other capabilities, but the idea is to focus on those upon which you can excel. So we can learn from the best. So you can compare your company with companies that are strong in your target capabilities. And quite possibly those companies won't be in the same industry as you. So if you look at other industries where companies may have developed extraordinary strengths in the capability that you desire. So for example, hotels and airlines have many differences, but they're comparable when it comes to several driving forces, such as stretching capital assets or pleasing travelers and so on. Additionally, I know of an airline that have looked at Formula One car racing, and they looked at the refueling process. As we know, this is done very quickly to see what can they learn anything on how best to go about that, and in terms of turning planes around quickly. So the advantage of looking outside of your own industry is that you can emulate them without competing with them, and also it's far more likely that they will share insights with you than your main competitors. The next guideline there is to create a virtuous cycle of assessment and investment. So this cycle, this assessment, it helps you to figure out what capabilities will be required for success so that you can decide where to invest your time and energy. So over time, repetition of this assessment investment cycle results in a baseline that you can use for benchmarking. Compare capability perceptions. So sometimes a comparison of perceptions can reveal differing views of the company. So for example, employees and customers may not agree with your perception that there is a shared mindset. So involve stakeholders in improvement plans and meet with them to discuss specific actions for going forward. The next one is to avoid underinvestment in intangibles, in company intangibles. So it's easy to fall into the trap of focusing on what's easy to measure instead of what's the greatest, what might be in need of repair. So focus on the underlying company factors that might add value. It's not easy, but sometimes some of these things are measurable, are more concrete. So for example, focus on efficiency is manageable. But often these things are difficult, and that's why we shy away from them. And the last one there is to don't confuse capabilities with activities. So capabilities emerge from a bundle of activities, not any single pursuit. So training, for example, needs to be understood in terms of the capability to which it contributes, not just the activity that takes place. So instead of asking how many hours training was completed, ask what capabilities the training created or what capabilities the training enhanced or was added to. So overall, focusing on capabilities, it helps you to avoid looking at are looking for a single, simple solution to complex business problems. So I think few would disagree that intangible capability or intangible assets are important. So, but they're difficult to measure, and they're even harder to communicate sometimes. But doing an audit can help. An audit is a way of making capabilities visible and meaningful. An audit can help to assist the companies to assess your company's strengths and weaknesses. It helps when defining strategy. It supports strategy execution. It enables staff to make things happen. And it helps customers and employees recognize the company's intangible value. So that's it for the moment. I'd like to thank you for listening. And I understand that not everything here is not relevant to everyone, to every company. We're all in different situations, different circumstances. However, there might be some things in there that, that you can't take away. So I'll hand you back to Sinead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
And thank you, Mark, and thank you, John. Very insightful and very informative, and certainly a study of capabilities and a clear demonstration of a company like the Irish Examiner that has had unbelievable resilience over 177 years. So our next speaker is Helen O'Donnell. Helen was born in Sligo, educated in Galway, and she's now the owner and manager of the Hunt Museum Cafe and event catering business in Limerick City. Helen is a very active member of the business community in Limerick City. She's chairperson of the Safe Food Advisory Board and the Limerick City Tidy Times Committee. Helen will be followed by our own Griffith College lecturer, Roseanne Dunn, and Roseanne's area of expertise is in strategic international marketing in a variety of sectors, FMCG, pharma, charity, and the community sectors. So Helen, when you're ready, let's go.
Good morning. If you told me on the 1st of March, when I had a diary full of bookings, parties, communions, confirmations, I'm obviously in catering, a wedding, a busy daytime cafe, that we would close on March 12th for 4 months, I would have said there's more in that cup than coffee. Initially, back then, we thought, this might be for 3-4 weeks, until we saw the news from Italy and Spain, albeit the races from Cheltenham went ahead. So we thought, this might not last long. But as we all know, the reality is quite different. Always an optimist, I set about when we closed, doing a deep clean of the cafe, sanding floors, sealing those same floors, painting, until 10 days later, we were locked out of our building because I operate in the Hunt Museum, which is a public building, so I have no access. And unfortunately, no option of doing the takeouts that Mark and John mentioned a while ago. So my business has literally stopped, full stop. So the first thing we did was get all the staff to sign up with COVID payment. And as some of you will know, they're doing better out of that than if they're working for me, because it is very generous. And some people who will be earning 200, 250 euros just work over lunch with us are now on a handsome 350. So I'm trying to work out when will they want to come back to work. The other thing I did, I'm very involved in the volunteering community sector. So I volunteered in my local community. And with the local GA club, which is South Liberties, we help some vulnerable people in the community here. So the first half of every day I spend cooking, which is obviously a talent I have, cooking lunches, shopping for some neighbours and elderly people, and delivering that food and messages. And this keeps me busy, because that's now personally I have to be busy, and it keeps me in touch. It also means I can legally go past the 2K. But then we have to deal with reality. So we're 2 weeks into this in my story, and And really I had to do sort of an audit, as we mentioned earlier, and take stock of my business and where I stood. I had to make lots of lists. Obviously, had I any outstanding invoices that I could drag in to pay my bills? I had to talk to my bank. I've had to talk to my landlord. I found them all very accommodating. And I also had to work out my outgoings and invoices that would normally be paid after 30 days. I think communication is the key here. I have found that by communicating with my suppliers, they've been incredibly supportive and have phased payments. And I think this is really important, that you keep talking to people and that you keep the lines of communication open. Some suppliers have taken back stock, which has been fantastic because it'll be out of date by the time we go back. And in parallel to this, I've always believed in networking, and I have a really strong local network. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and they've been giving very useful updates on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, because there's so much new information. We really need to be kept up to date. So by following all of that, it's kept me in touch with what's happening and trying not to miss anything. This session is very useful, and Griffith College and the Chambers Ireland. So by doing this, you're helping yourself. Other organisations that I've linked in with are, for example, Limerick City County Council, through limerick.ie, and the Enterprise Board, which every county has an Enterprise Board, and this is a really useful tool that you can hook into. They have made a list of businesses that are functioning, what they're doing, if they're doing takeaways, if they're doing supplying online, who's open, who's not. And it's a really good method of keeping your brand out there. Now, right now, I'm not on that list, because only the other day we discovered that possibly we won't be able to get back with the rest of the cafes and restaurants. We won't be back until mid-July, and by the looks of things. But these things are fluid, and I think will change. So hopefully we might get back into business a little bit earlier. The Limerick Enterprise Board, as I mentioned, they've also provided online training for people to obviously communicate with other people who are in business, but also upskill you on all the things that John mentioned. He mentioned more than I've even heard of being online and having a presence and making sure that you're staying in touch. They also have grants available. Again, every day there's a new information, so you really have to keep on top of that. If you're not an existing network, as I am, I would strongly suggest that you create your own network. And now is an ideal time, during downtime. Perhaps getting together with people on your street or in your village, and use this time to communicate with those, because even though some of you are competing against each other, we all have a benefit of staying in business. Another organisation I'm involved with is Tidy Towns in the city. And our major aim when we get back to being open is to come back to a clean city. And to that end, the council are doing a deep clean of our streets at the moment. And we will be, when we're allowed back, supporting that work by weeding, litter picking and painting. And it's really important that people come back to a very clean space, an inviting space, and particularly when you're in a city, as I am, you're competing with shopping centres. You're competing with spaces that are very carefully managed. So we would like to be of the standard of a shopping centre when we come back into the city. Other idea would be make your business inviting. For example, clean the windows and make sure there are no weeds on the footpath outside. Paint your door and take a really good look at your business. I think this is something we're so busy always trying to keep our business going that we don't have the time to stand back. But now is a really good time to do that. So have a look what your customer sees from outside your business and from when they walk up to your door. For example, use flower planters. And again, our gardens department and the local authority have offered us some flowers they have left having filled all the baskets that will turn up in about a month's time on our rivers and streets. Keep your brand out there through social media. Always think of what you post and make sure it's really good quality, good photographs, and always be positive, and keep your business separate to your personal information. You know, be very specific, because people turn off very fast if you're if you're too busy on social media. I think be really careful how you use it. You have loyal customers. They want you to return, and they'll look forward to you coming back. Everybody wants your business to open again, even your competitors. And I'm reminded that competition is the life of trade. In my business where I operate, when we started 23 years ago, we had 5 or 6 cafes and restaurants on our street. And one by one, they were bought off by a developer to reorganize that part of the city, and it stalled, and it stalled again, and it still stalled. So we really miss the vibrance of being in a busy space. So, you know, while competition is tough sometimes, and maybe they're busier than you are, it's really important that you have competition, and it also ups the ante. Now, fortunately, we have one of those cafes has returned to our street, and it's great. And the Green Yarn is just across the road from us, and it's really good to have that buzz on the street again. Another issue for us is security, and we're dealing with this again through the city centre group that I'm involved with, through the Chamber of Commerce. We're tic-tacking with the local guards and with the guards on the beat, because it's very important, no more than the shopping centre alternative to the city, that it's a clean, safe place to come into when people come back into the city, and you know that there's not a lot of people begging outside your door, or you know that there's not a lot of dysfunctional activity in the area that you operate. And by working with the guards, you can prevent a lot of this. Another idea for people might be to join Women's Network, perhaps Rotary, perhaps the Lions Club. There are loads of organisations that are out there that are always looking for members. And I find that being in an organisation, it's all about networking. And it's extraordinary the amount of value that that can add to your business. And back to reality. What kind of business am I going to go back to? And that's a really big question. We'll have a cafe with less tables, hence less customers, who might be slow to return. We'll have no outdoor catering in the short term because of numbers at parties and that type of thing. So how can we adapt? And some ideas would be, for me, the things I'm thinking through at the moment are food to go. Make more use of our garden. We have a lovely garden. We've just had a garden competition to try and enhance our garden, and that's take down the railings and open up down to the river. So using our garden and encouraging people to visit the gardens where there's lots of space. We'll provide seating, and perhaps that's something that I can do. A new summer menu. Obviously, you can always revitalise your business by changing the menu and having new ideas and being really seasonal and really local. And everything we do is about locally sourced food, really good quality food. And I suppose at the end of that, we have to be flexible, open to new ideas, open to change. The museum in which we operate will perhaps have ticketed admission. So we won't have the type of free flow that we would have had through the building. So all of this will be about being flexible, being adjustable. I think I have to look, as you hopefully will, look at this as an opportunity to, in a way, relaunch your business and be excited about it, like opening a new business. And also, I'd remind everybody that you're not alone in this. This is something that everybody, no matter what business, right around the world, We're all in this together. So, you know, sometimes you feel very isolated, particularly when you're the principal in the business and you're there on your own. It can be very isolating, but to remember that you're not on your own. There are many others in this situation. I'm keeping an eye to what others are doing. A lot of people are venting their frustrations on social media. I'd say keep away from that. If you could have a mentor, that'd be a really good idea. Again, the local enterprise centre can give you a virtual mentor. And I just remind you, you are your biggest asset. Also, look after yourself. Try mindfulness, yoga, Pilates. There are a whole lot of other things. Go for a walk, listen to the birds. That's free. And finally, best of luck with whatever you're doing. Thank you for listening, and I'd be delighted to take questions.
Thank you, Helen. That was fantastic. Now we're going to make a very slight change to our plan because our friend John O'Mahony, working for the Irish Examiner, must leave for an important call. So I'm going to invite my colleague Anthony Brosnan from Griffith College in Limerick just to ask a few questions from the Q&A to John. Thanks, Anthony.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Sinead. Thanks to John and all the speakers today. So, John, I know you're under pressure, so I'll keep it quick. The first question, John, is from Richard, and he wants to know, what considerations are you giving to press releases that are coming in from PR agencies or directly from companies that are not COVID related? Are you still able to monitor these, or have you put in place new ways of assessing them?
Yes, we are still monitoring them. I suppose we're kind of very conscious of the fact that you sort of have to balance out how you cover the COVID-19 crisis without over-covering it. So there are lots of other things kind of happening outside of COVID, and we're kind of conscious that we need to get that information out there. And even how we kind of cover the COVID-19 crisis is interesting. I mean, one of the things we've noticed as an organization is the sense of community that's built up, and how every kind of different facets of the community have come together to kind of help each other, you know what I mean? So there are lots of kind of positive stories that we'd like to cover. I think as well as kind of, as the government begins to kind of lift restrictions, what we kind of deemed normal before will begin to return and stuff. So as companies become, I suppose, back on stream, we'll have a lot more engagement in terms of what comes in terms of press releases, in terms of standard emails in. And we're kind of very conscious that we want to be kind of central in helping kind of businesses get back up and running and to kind of tell that positive story.
Okay, super, thanks for that. Another question in from Paula, John. What's your opinion on the coalition with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael? Do you think it'll work? What's your take on that?
It's an interesting question. As I said earlier, it's been kind of lost in the kind of wider COVID conversation. It's unparalleled in terms of what's I suppose the change in political landscape. It's a massive gamble. I mean, I think Simon Coveney, the Taoiseach, mentioned something in the region of 80 seats to have a stable kind of administration. So that would be Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Greens, and as many as 6 or 8 independents. So that's a lot of kind of individual kind of shopping lists and a lot of kind of constituents to kind of keep happy. But what is important is, and I think there's a realization there, is that, well, the current administration has done everything it can to, I suppose, respond to these very changed times. We do need an administration, a secure administration from June onwards, because the next phase of the recovery package, which covers, I think, 5.6 billion for small businesses, does need a change in legislation. And we do need a new government and a Shannon in place before any new laws can be passed. So obviously there's a clock ticking in the background. So short answer is I don't know. My best answer is I hope so.
Super, thanks for that. One last question, and before I go into the last question, there's just a lovely comment in there as well. When I'm in Cork, I relish reading the Examiner, a different perspective on national news that you get from a Dublin-based paper. So thanks for that. And just a last question, John, before you let you go. Do you believe the media have a role to play with the consumer trust in returning to their normal life? And that's from someone who runs a sports and leisure centre.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I suppose one of the messages we try to get home is that, look, I mean, there's no need to sensationalize anything that's happening at the minute. I mean, it's what's happened by any kind of a comparison is sensational. So, I mean, what we're trying to do is not to add to the sense of anxiety or fear that's out there. And we're trying to, I suppose, maybe reduce the level of confusion that's out there by just telling it as it is, basically. And to be fair to the government and to the other news organisations, it's just a matter of, I suppose, letting people know what's happening in reality. I suppose challenging some of that in terms of the decision that is going to be made, because obviously it's going to affect us going forward. But also trying to tap into, I mentioned that kind of, I think what's going to be very important, I think in the recovery for all of us, is that, without using this kind of overused phrase, we're in this together. And I think that if certainly the public response to the government restrictions has been very impressive in terms of the vast majority of people by choice have decided to kind of cocoon, stay at home, to change how they live and how they work. And I think that if we can kind of harness that kind of sense of spirit and I think stay loyal to our local businesses and I suppose return, I suppose, some of their the effort and sacrifice they've made and be conscious of that as we go back out and shop and eat and drink and stuff. I think there's a very good chance that we can all kind of respond as quickly together as we did when we were getting introduced to the lockdown.
Lovely, lovely. Thanks for that, John. And thanks again for your time. I know you're under pressure now, so I'll pass you back to Sinead there. So Sinead, if you want to come back in.
Thanks, guys, and best of luck.
Thanks very much, John.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Anthony. So we have our final speaker, and that is Roseanne Dunn. And Roseanne Dunn is a business lecturer in the Griffith College, Limerick campus. Roseanne's area, as I mentioned earlier, she specializes in the area of international marketing in FMCG, pharma, charity, and the community centres. So Roseanne, when you're ready, let's go.
Okay, I'm conscious of time now, so I am going to move along as quickly as I can. Thank you very much for the introduction, and I must say I've really found what I've heard so far really interesting. So actually, much of what I'm going to talk about is repetition. It's we've all seen how consumer behaviour has changed. So I'm going to look at, say, resourcefulness, looking for new opportunities, and then offering some suggestions, not solutions, but some suggestions and ideas as to where we can go next. So right now, we're trying to put order in our lives. Our lives are, we've experienced an unprecedented level of volatility and uncertainty. And what consumers want is to put, order back in their lives. Organizations are trying to become more agile, and consumer-facing organizations are trying to find their way through the pandemic. But what they have to realize is that consumers are already evolving at great speed. They just need to keep up with them. So, and the other speakers have talked about, being in this together. It's about recognizing where we are. So I don't want to overplay that, but, there will be a recovery. I had a teacher who used to say, every problem contains the root of its own solution. So there is a solution, we just need to find it. I'm very practical. So thinking practically, so anything business or brand can do right now to tap into this immense sense of community that we're experiencing is really valuable. So as Helen mentioned, get out there, connect with your community groups, be seen in the community network. So whether that's aligning with a bigger cause or tapping into some more local event, that's what you need to do. So we've noticed how consumer behavior has changed considerably. If you ask yourself how your consumption has changed, and I'm sure you'll be, amazed with how things have changed over the last few weeks. And John mentioned, and it's a really good point, while currently there are limited opportunities to spend, that doesn't mean we don't want to. So the demand is there. Consumers are just being really cautious. the majority haven't felt the pinch yet, and it is felt disproportionately by the 85% or so of businesses that have closed. What we have found is that the last recession has changed our buying habits, and it particularly leveled the demographic shopper profile in the discount multiples, and it made savviness a badge of honor. What we're seeing now is resourcefulness emerging as a virtue. So, and it's early days in the, the lockdown, but we're seeing shifts in consumer behavior, including, buying more flour, baking products, home cleaning, and interestingly, less personal care products are being purchased. There's more alcohol being bought, less takeaways during the week, but more at weekends. What we're also seeing is supporting local is the new buying Irish. And the last speakers mentioned that. So that's really important. It's an opportunity for businesses to, make their presence felt. And if they're Irish, if they're local, well, stand up and shout that. So organizations and brands across industries, they're confronting a new reality of really anxious consumers, and I don't need to go into lots of examples, but consumers are anxious about, your business when you reopen. Will it be safe? Will there be social distancing? How are you going to deliver? Will there be logistics problems? So my example here is, and as Helen said, contact your consumer. So this assumes you've got a database of signed up, willing consumers. If you haven't, now's the time to get on social media and share a message, and ask people to connect with you if they're not on your database. We have to be mindful of GDPR. What we're finding is customers are really savvy. They're more digital literate than they were in the past. And I want to give you an example of a small shoe company in, actually they do shoe repairs and key cutting in Limerick, Franklin's Shoe Repair. They sent a message on social media, and I'm not even on their database. They sent a message which was shared, we will be up and running, fairly shortly, not at the moment, but please leave a review. And I thought that was really good. So I left a really positive review. So we've been really impressed with some of the resourcefulness and innovation we've seen out there, and the other speakers have mentioned it, but we've seen how businesses are reacting to the crisis. They're connecting with customers on all sorts of levels, trying to keep trade going. So whether that's switching to takeaway or coffee shops becoming distribution outlets, it's hugely supportive. So we're trying to be resourceful and proactive and get through this together. I listen to Radio 1 all the time, and I hear businesses being profiled every morning, and then it does just a huge boost for Irish business when this happens. We're trying to build up a trust with all the small Irish businesses. So right now, brands that take proactive steps to address customer concerns, they demonstrate a customer centricity, and it's all about connecting with your consumers. And this is really important when customer needs and sensitivities are so great. So we've seen lots of innovation. Hunt Museum has gone online. We've seen companies that have completely pivoted in their offering. Riverfest was online last weekend, and then Stuff You Need. It's an Irish company that's I would only equate it to like an Amazon online, and then quite a number of companies have been in a position to produce sanitizers. So, and this is we've seen some really good examples of positive support for frontline staff, hospital workers, just frontline staff, and mostly it's really positive. Then this one, I just caught my eye. This is an Irish designer and how she decided to take advantage of her lockdown time in Dublin. So she's recreating famous pictures. So you're probably wondering, well, what's the opportunity here? Well, there's definitely a market for recreations, and there's an opportunity possibly for framers, for photographers, for new works similar to this. So looking for opportunities. Okay, so brands are trying to adapt to a reduced bottom line, and it's worth taking some lessons from the last downturn. And although this looks very different, the economy is in better shape this time than after the last recession. We know that brands that actively supported consumers in tough times, for example, Aldi, Lidl, SuperValu, they maintained that support after the recession, and they grew share after the economy recovered. So my message is, if you can be there for your customers when things get bad, they will reward you with customer loyalty. And currently, businesses that are standing out as being, very strong and community committed are the GAA, SuperValu, Unpust. Unpust are busier at the moment than they were on Black Friday and at Christmas with all the parcels that they're being delivering. And John did mention the explosion in home deliveries. So it's absolutely essential. If you're not online, you need to get online. And this is, the perfect opportunity to develop your online offering. The local angle is another powerful driver at the minute. So brands should be communicating how local, how Irish they are, how many jobs they're supporting. So however it's approached, you need to have some online presence. So there's a lot of thinking outside the box at the moment. And there's always some way of connecting with your customers and, keeping that communication going. I heard a really good point on the radio the other morning. Services in the future will differentiate themselves not on price, but how clean and spacious their premises is. So it gives a whole new meaning to the spacious restaurant. And I have an example of a small medical supplies company in Dublin, a colleague of mine. They were recently approached by the HSE to source mattresses, for the current pandemic, and the company wasn't in great shape financially. And this made a huge difference. They sourced thousands of mattresses from Irish suppliers, and the chances are that, they will definitely be on the HSE supplier list because the products they supplied are Irish made. There's shorter lead time and shorter communication channel. So let's send out a strong message that Irish companies have an uncompromising attitude to quality. So these are some sentiments and attitudes that became evident from B&A research, behaviour and attitudes research. Now, interestingly, this research was conducted in January this year. And I think it's kind of ironic that a lot of these views and attitudes are with us now, particularly the renewed interest in household cleaning. There's more interest in one's own health, an increase in interest in, say, vitamins and, a healthier way of living. So my question is there a possibility, is there a way that we could convert these shifts in consumer behavior into some revenue streaming, sustainable opportunity? And our world will not be the same. We've definitely, our behavior, has changed. We may go back to some way of, previous behavior, but we've definitely changed how we consume products. So our thinking in some of the key issues has already shifted radically around technology, increased awareness around our carbon footprint. And what I'm seeing is a genuine interest and a genuine desire to make an interest, to make a difference. And whatever world we come back to, it will be a cleaner, healthier planet. So where to next? Connect with your consumers. Customer relationship marketing programs are absolutely essential. So do some research, look at the changes in consumption, buying behavior, ask your customers what they want. Customers are more digitally enabled in the past, so you can reach customers in lots of ways. Are there segments of the market that aren't being satisfied by your current offering? Going online offers access to new markets now. have a colleague in Dublin with a nutrition business, and she had limited her business by she was doing face-to-face consultations, and she felt that her business was limited by the distance a client would reasonably travel. But now she can consult online, and it's just incredible. So her whole market is opened up. People are resistant to being in groups, and the chances are this is going to remain this way for quite some time to come. So social distancing in work, it's not always going to work for people to remotely work. There will be some people who will have to go back to work. So this could mean perhaps a return to work cubicles. Is there an opportunity here? And Mark talked about a colleague of his making signs, and I was thinking, you know, this company could definitely, you know, design some kind of you know, partitions for the open space office that is no more. Another product that's in huge demand is Perspex. Pubs preparing for social distancing. You know, how are they going to partition, or is it possible? Who knows? So what are your competitors doing? What price do you think your consumers might pay for your product? How are you going to reach them? Why would they want or need your product? How are you going to promote your product? These are all things to think about. I came across some really interesting research that I thought I wanted to share with you. So EY, they've identified 5 new consumer segments post COVID-19. The first, so the get to normal consumers, these are determined that after the pandemic, things for them will get back to normal. Most of them don't expect the crisis to have changed their life on any major dimension. The cautiously extravagant group, they're financially conservative, and they expect to increase spend across you know, all categories once this crisis is over. But almost half believe that how they shop and what and where they buy will have changed permanently. So these 2 segments respond strongly to purposeful brands. Most of them have said that they're more likely to purchase from companies that they feel are doing something good for society. And a third have said that they would pay a premium for brands that would contribute to society, and almost a half would spend more on domestically produced goods. So I think that's a huge takeaway from, you know, what we view as the new consumer. And I'm going to leave you with this really positive image. This is from O'Toole's Packaging in Limerick. So this company, 106 years old, they've seen their business go through 2 world wars, 2 recessions, a plastic bag tax, and they're all smiling, and they're feeling really positive about the future. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Razan. So that's our session for today. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. We had a great lineup today for you. I'd like to thank John, Mark, Helen, Roseanne, and Anthony and Sinead from Griffith College, Limerick and Cork. And also thank you to all the businesses who joined today. Thank you to those of you who are members of Chambers Ireland. We're delighted to be providing this series in association with Chambers Ireland. So thank you so much for your support. And thank you to all the businesses for joining today. We do invite you to look at the workbook, to download the workbook, and also to say that our slides and all of the resources will be available on the Griffith College website shortly after this session. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the session on what resources do I need for my business development plan. And also please do engage with us on social media using the hashtag Reboot 2020. So for myself and all the team, thank you so much, and see you tomorrow.